Hi everyone and welcome back to another episode of OSCE Talk. Today we're going to go through ABG interpretation, or arterial blood gas interpretation. This can be quite a visual topic, so it might be useful to watch on Spotify video or YouTube. First thing I would say is if you are asked to interpret an ABG in an OSCE, it's usually going to be at the end of the station, so that will be useful because you'll have seen and assessed the patient, and that's important because when looking at an ABG you're not just looking at numbers, you should be looking at the patient as well. For example, on an ABG, it often won't say how much oxygen they're on. So reasonable O2 may look normal, but could be very concerning because the patient could be on a high amount of oxygen. Another useful example is in asthma, when early on patients often hyperventilate and blow off carbon dioxide, and then in a very unwell asthmatic patient, the CO2 can begin to return to normal as the patient is starting to tire. So seeing a normal CO2 on a result may be falsely reassuring. So always think, who is this patient? Why was this gas taken? Are they on oxygen? And do these numbers fit the clinical picture?
So the first thing I'm going to be taking us through is oxygenation on an ABG. Really, this question is simply, are they hypoxemic? It's important to annotate on the ABG whether they're on room air or actually on supplemental oxygen. You know, if someone has a PaO2 of 10 or 11 on room air, that's pretty reasonable. If someone has a PaO2 of 10 or 11, but they're actually on 15 litres via non-rebreather, then that shows a patient who's got quite a significant oxygen requirement. Then we're going to be thinking about type 1 and type 2 respiratory failure. In both of the respiratory failures, the patient is going to be hypoxemic. But in type 1 respiratory failure, the CO2 won't be raised. In type 2 respiratory failure, the CO2 will be raised. I always like to think of it in type 2, you have two derangements. So you've got low oxygen and raised CO2. Type 1 is mostly patients where kind of oxygen transfer is impaired, and that'll be pneumonia, PEs, pulmonary edema. But actually type 2 just tells you the patient isn't ventilating well and is then retaining carbon dioxide. This will be things like decompensated COPD, sedating drugs, and other causes of hypoventilation. Then we're going to have a quick look at the pH. So really, anything below 7.35 means that the patient is acidotic. Anything above 7.45 means the patient is alkalotic. Then we might have already had a look at it, but it's important to focus in on it alone. That'll be the CO2. So when CO2 rises, that's going to drive an acidosis. And when we're blowing off CO2, that's going to make the patient more alkalotic. And sometimes patients will do this to compensate. So someone who's breathing very, very quickly, hyperventilating, they'll have a respiratory alkalosis, and they'll be blowing off lots of CO2, and then their pH will be rising. And if the pH is low and the CO2 is high, then we're going to be thinking about a respiratory acidosis. And again, just as we covered there, that would be a type 2 picture. Then we'll think about bicarbonate, and that's going to tell us about the metabolic processes of the body. So bicarbonate's a base, so when bicarbonate goes down, that makes patients more acidosis, and when bicarbonate goes up, that's going to push patients into an alkalosis. So a low pH with a very low bicarbonate of 10 or 12, you're going to be thinking about a metabolic acidosis. That could be due to something like renal failure or DKA. And then a high pH with a high bicarbonate, that'll be a kind of metabolic alkalosis. So just for an example, so let's say our pH is 7.25, so that's acidotic. Let's say our CO2 is 3.5, so that's pretty low. So the CO2 really isn't driving this acidosis. But then if we look down at the bicarbonate, let's say that it's 15, so that's low. And so that'll be a low bicarbonate causing an acidosis, so that'll be a metabolic acidosis. And that CO2 actually is the lungs trying to compensate. And that takes us on to compensation of the body. So obviously the body doesn't like having abnormal pH. And if the main problem is metabolic, then the lungs can respond reasonably quickly to try and change ventilation. So for someone with a metabolic acidosis, like the example previously, they'll actually be tachypneic in the attempt to blow off CO2. So that'll help to raise the pH. Obviously, the same can be true the other way around. If the patient's main issue is respiratory, then compensation might occur through the kidneys trying to adjust the bicarbonate. Changes in bicarbonate are slower than changes with the lungs. So someone with long-standing CO2 retention, where their CO2 might be 8, 7 or 8 constantly, that could be from something like COPD, their bicarbonate will start to rise and you might see a bicarbonate of above 30. And that's because the kidneys have a time to adjust and retain bicarbonate and try to compensate for that chronic respiratory acidosis. You'll also see there's a number of other pieces of data points on the actual ABG. An ABG will tell you what someone's blood sugar is, so that'll be very helpful if you're querying something like DKA. It'll also give you their lactate, which again could tell you if they're in a lactic acidosis. And it'll give you other numbers like an anion gap and base excess. So to go through base excess, don't overcomplicate it. This is again another metabolic measure on the ABG. A negative base excess below -2, that tells you that they're in a metabolic acidosis. And then a positive base excess above +2 would tell you more that they're in more of a metabolic alkalotic state. So you want to look at base excess and bicarbonate together. So following on directly from that is the anion gap. This is something people get sort of a bit confused about, but it's actually really helpful when determining the cause of a metabolic acidosis. So the most commonly used formula for this is sodium and potassium minus chloride and bicarbonate. So that's basically the cations minus the anions. So a high anion gap metabolic acidosis means that there's additional unmeasured acids present. The big ones there will be lactic acidosis, diabetic ketoacidosis, renal failure, and other toxins. You may hear about the mud piles mnemonic. Mud piles stands for methanol overdose, uremia, P is for propylene glycol or paraaldehydes, I is for isoniazide or iron overdose, L is for lactic acidosis, which is probably one of the most common ones, E is for ethylene glycol overdose, and S is for salicylates, and that'll be the late phase of a salicylate overdose. So that'll be things like aspirin. You may also hear the kind of term RAGMA, so like a raised anion gap metabolic acidosis. Then we'll think about normal anion gap metabolic acidosis, which you'll often see, and that'll just be the bicarbonate loss. So think about things like diarrhea and renal tubular acidosis. For an OSCE, knowing any more than that's not really required. So let's chat through the 4 basic patterns. So respiratory acidosis, pH goes down and the CO2 goes up. That'll be like a type 2 respiratory failure type picture. Respiratory alkalosis, pH goes up and the CO2 goes down. That'll be things like PE and anxiety attacks. Metabolic acidosis, the pH is going to go down and the bicarbonate's going to go down. And as we said, that can be a raised anion gap metabolic acidosis or a normal anion gap metabolic acidosis. But the big ones here are going to be lactic acidosis, DKA, renal failures. And then metabolic alkalosis is a bit less common. That's where the pH goes up and the bicarbonate goes up. So the main questions we're going to be asking to ourselves when we look at the gas is, where's the pH going? What is the O2 and the CO2 doing? And then what is the bicarbonate, the base excess, and the anion gap? And then we can have a look at all the other pieces of data on the ABG as well.
Perfect, Matthew. So I'm just going to go through some worked examples of an ABG. So say a young patient presents feeling very unwell, polyuria, vomiting, dehydration, and drowsiness. Their ABG shows a pH of 7.2, a CO2 of 3, bicarbonate of 12. Starting with the pH, 7.2, that means they're acidotic. CO2 is low, and a low CO2 would make the patient more alkaline, so that cannot be causing the acidosis. A bicarbonate of 12 is quite low, so if you have a low bicarbonate, that can cause acidosis. So I would say this looks primarily like a metabolic acidosis. So going back to the CO2, why is it low? If this patient is unwell with metabolic acidosis, they may be hyperventilating and blowing off CO2 to try and compensate. So we may have metabolic acidosis with respiratory compensation. So looking at the clinical picture, patient with polyuria, vomiting, dehydration and drowsiness, and a metabolic acidosis in a young patient should make you think about diabetic ketoacidosis. And you may see that characteristic Kussmaul breathing from them being acidotic. Let's say you have an older patient with severe COPD. Their ABG shows a pH of 7.34, a CO2 of 8, and a bicarbonate of 32. So the pH is just slightly low, below 7.35, so we're just on the acidotic side. The CO2 is 8, that's high, and a high CO2 causes acidosis. So I would be thinking at this stage, is this a respiratory acidosis? But the bicarbonate is also high at 32. So I'd be thinking that the kidneys have retained bicarbonate to compensate for the chronically raised CO2. And the fact that bicarbonate is significantly raised suggests at least some signs of chronicity. So this could represent a chronic, metabolically compensated respiratory acidosis. There may possibly be an acute deterioration depending on the patient's previous gases and clinical picture. And in these examples, this is where comparing with an old ABG can be very useful. Obviously, in some patients, a CO2 of 8 can be extremely worrying, whereas in other patients, that may be close to their baseline. Let's say we have a patient that has been vomiting repeatedly for several days. Their pH is 7.49 and their CO2 is 6.3 and the bicarbonate is 32. So the pH is high, so they are alkalotic. The bicarbonate is high, and a high bicarbonate causes alkalosis. So I'd be thinking, is this a metabolic alkalosis? The CO2 is also slightly raised, so this patient may be having a respiratory compensation. And again, clinically, very common cause of metabolic alkalosis is vomiting. So how would you present this after you've read through it? It's useful to read through and in front of the examiner. Try not to say things like the pH is low. You can say that, but try to say the pH is low, so they're acidemic. The O2 is low, so they're hypoxemic, and things like that. When putting it together at the end, you just want to sound as fluid as possible, so you might put it together and say, this patient is hypoxemic. They have an acidemia with a raised PaCO2, indicating respiratory acidosis. The bicarbonate is also raised, suggesting metabolic compensation and possibly a degree of chronic CO2 retention. In summary, this looks like decompensated respiratory acidosis with hypoxemia, and I would be concerned about type 2 respiratory failure.
In inpatient medicine, a job that you'll be quite commonly asked to do will be to decide a patient's target saturations, whether that would be 88 to 92% of oxygen, or whether that be over 94%. So it's important that you obviously have a read through the notes, but actually looking at the previous blood gases can really help give an indication whether this patient has a propensity towards type 2 respiratory failure. Look at their previous gas and see, has their CO2 been raised? Sometimes you'll see patients' CO2s be 7, 8 or 9. Have a look at their previous pHs. Has their pH been acidotic with a raised CO2? That'll tell you that it's quite likely that they'll go into type 2 respiratory failure. The other thing you can do is then look at their bicarbonate. Is their bicarbonate raised chronically? Again, this is an indication that someone has a bit of a respiratory acidosis ongoing. So obviously for these patients at risk of type 2 respiratory failure, we'll put them on a slightly lower oxygen target. That would be the 88 to 92. This is kind of a common example of where interpreting ABGs can be really vital in patient care. Thank you for listening.